Welcome to another episode of Inappropriate Growth. Today, we have a truly fascinating guest, Henry Woodman. Henry's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. From searching for lost cities in the jungles of Honduras as a teenager to building a business empire in college, his story is filled with adventure, innovation, and success. He's produced travel films, developed a hit game show in Chile, and bootstrapped a global tech platform that sold for eight figures. Now, he's coming full circle to fulfill a dream of producing a TV series based on the book, The Reincarnation of Marie. Join us as we dive into Henry's incredible experiences and insights. Let's get inappropriate. All right. Welcome to season 3, episode 1 of the Inappropriate Growth Podcast. I'm Paul Angel, your host. And today we're very happy to have Mr. Henry Woodman with us. And Henry, so I don't have to do it, tell our listeners where you are and how you got there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm in South Florida physically. How I got here, well, I woke up from bed and I went upstairs to the office. How I got to South Florida, I was actually born and raised for the most part in South Florida, but spent many of my adult years traveling. But South Florida is my home now.
That's interesting to me. I mean, I'm curious about your teenage adventures. You were in the jungles of Honduras. What
Yeah.
inspired you to go on that particular journey?
I don't know if that was inspiration as much as dad, who said, "Oh my God, there is this lost city in the jungles of Honduras called Ciudad Blanca, a white city, right? And what an adventure it would be. You and your brother and your, teenage friends go out there." We thought he's just trying to fucking get rid of us for the summer, right? And then in the middle of it, we thought he just wants to have us killed, right? We were sold, if you will, by my father on this great adventure, dreams of we're going to be on the Johnny Carson's show for this big, find of this archaeological ruin in the jungles. And so we go to Honduras and, we get on a small little Cessna plane with a guy who has phone books to prop him up because he's too short. And they called him Captain Crash, which tells you a lot about what's about to happen. And, as kids, we're like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, whatever. And we get there and we realize it is not the suburban lifestyle of a middle-aged kid in the U.S., So we spent a couple of weeks in the jungles looking for a lost city. We did find some things. We probably walked over the lost city multiple times because it's buried in the jungle. You can't see it. It's engulfed with all the flora and fauna. And years later, they used LiDAR and they found the lost white city buried in pretty much the same place, right? So you could walk right on top of these things and never see it. But it was one of those adventures as a kid that you went, man, am I grateful for food and water and shelter and safety. Yeah,
Maybe your dad just wanted you to appreciate some of the things you had at home.
Yeah, beyond that, I was thinking he just wanted to get us out of his hair, but, to appreciate the things. And, I think it was a big deal just to say, you guys will grow up. I was a Marine. You're not even doing this, grow up. And it helped.
How did you come up with the idea to set up video game machines and laundromats during college? What were some of those? And I'm curious what kind of challenges you faced in that space doing that.
Well, the answer is pretty simple. I mean, I'm a hedonist by nature and an opportunist, but I'm sitting in a laundromat sophomore year and I have a pocket full of quarters. I'm sitting there waiting for my clothes to wash and dry. I don't want to crack the books. I'm addicted to Pac-Man. I'm thinking to myself, somebody's got to have video game machines in these laundromats because there's people sitting around waiting for their clothes, right? So I go back, I call every laundromat in Tucson, where I went to college. And I say, do you guys have video game machines? Because I'm thinking I would go to one of these places. And they all said no. So I thought, well, if I brought one in, would you be willing to share the revenue? They all said yes. No, they all didn't say yes. And many of them said yes. And I thought, okay, well, the first challenge was, okay, I don't have any money. How am I going to get a machine in there? And so then I found out that in Phoenix, they were doing these auctions, these video game stores they had in malls and stuff. They would get rid of the machines that didn't really produce any money. People didn't like them. They'd send them out to auction just to get them up, get rid of them, right? So I scraped together a couple $100 from my college savings or my college tuition, and I bought one machine, a machine you've never heard of. It's called Frisky Tom, right? And I put it in a laundromat, and I thought, okay, they're going to show up, they're going to do it. And sure enough, they would do it. A couple months later, I go to the auction, I get a couple more. And eventually I keep adding more, and I realized that the people who would play it weren't that happy because they were kind of shitty machines, if you will. And so what I would do is I would rotate them, from one laundromat to the next to the next. So they go, oh, they finally figured out it was a piece of crap, and they come back, oh, it's a new machine, even though that was less than attractive. Essentially, I had a captive audience, and really the realization wasn't, oh, there's an opportunity. It was to fulfill a problem I had. I wanted to play Pac-Man or a video game, and I had time and I had quarters, and kind of that's where it grew out of.
I recently lost some weight. I'm not sure why, but I lost over 20 pounds, and it made me very excited that I had never thrown away my old Aladdin's Castle t-shirt, which I kept it even though it was way too tight. Now it fits. So I have an Aladdin's Castle t-shirt that I'm wearing. I remember the video game arcade days. And yeah, if it was a crappy machine, it was taking up valuable real estate. They needed to get rid of it.
Exactly right.
Travel films. What drew you to producing travel films, and what was your most memorable experience doing that?
Well, we'll start back when I was in Honduras. One of the things that happened after I got back was they sent an ABC Sportsman crew down to film the stuff. Most of the credit was given to my dad. He did nothing. Anyway, so I thought, wow, these guys are traveling. They're having fun. This is what I want to do, right? So when I take off to college, I study film and television, right? I think, you know what, I'm going to go to Los Angeles. I'm going to be a big movie producer, director. Yeah. I graduate college. I go to LA. I sell the video game business to get a little money to survive in LA. And I end up learning that there's a lot of effort. You got to kiss a lot of butt. And it's not like you just walk in and they're going to give you a movie to produce. And so I started working on travel films as what's called a PA, a production assistant. And eventually, after like 10 years of doing this, from PA to sound man to assistant director to producer, I ended up producing travel films and loving it because it's new, it's exciting, it's creative, and there's travel. And I wasn't married and I had a lot of fun. So the motivation really was, again, hedonistic, right? I can go visit different places. They're going to pay for my travel. They're going to pay for my hotel. And they're going to pay me for doing this as well. So I loved it.
One of my good friends, she started a magazine. She was a radio sales executive. She started a magazine, like a free local magazine, Travel and Leisure, but half of it was ads for local bars and restaurants and clothing stores and stuff. But it came out once a month. And once a month, she would write an article based on a trip she took. Well, she wrote off the entire trip and she got to travel to all these exotic places. And as the magazine grew, and got more pages, which meant more ads, which meant more money, her vacation started getting nicer and nicer and nicer, where, she was remotely editing her magazine using a satellite link in Bora Bora. But she told me the greatest job anyone can have is that as a travel writer or a travel photographer, because you get paid to just travel.
Yeah. And you're shooting meals, right? So you're filming and you're like getting taste of everything, and the chef is doing his best work. This is my signature dish, and you're like, bring me your signature dessert. It was like gluttony and oh my god, yeah.
All right, another gear. How did you transition from producing the travel films to developing a hit game show in Chile? I mean, what was that creative process like? And talk about that.
Therein is the connecting the dots and the opportunity, right? So I'm producing travel films. I'm in Chile. I have a production partner that is helping me with the support services in Chile. Chile becomes a democracy from a dictatorship, right? Pinochet was a dictator. He left and the country becomes democratic. And as a result, they now have television networks that are added, meaning there's a brand new network and there's no content, right? So I'm thinking, okay, they need content. There is a young demographic. What can I pitch that would be on this new TV network in Chile? And so I ripped off an idea for a show and I called it Machos, which was a dating show where we would set up blind dates for, younger audience in the, early 20s. And they loved it, right? Because they had never seen stuff like that. And it was very sort of hip and MTV-ish for the time. And so it was called, like I said, it was called Machos, and it was produced in Chile by La Red. Really taking advantage of the opportunity. New content needs, young demographic, how bad could it be?
Tech platform success, right? Logical next step. Can you share the story behind bootstrapping and scaling your global tech platform, and maybe tell me what were some of the key factors that contributed to its overall success?
Yeah. So all of this sort of follows the connecting the dots and taking advantage of opportunities along the way. So I'm in Chile, right? There comes a point where I realize, at some point I thought, yeah, I think I could live here. And then I realized, I don't want to live here. I'd rather live a middle class life in the US than, the infrastructure issues and challenges and safety issues in Latin America, right? So while I'm in Chile, I see this digital revolution where you can, do things digitally, and you can take a picture and look all around a room with virtual reality. And I thought, that's the coolest thing ever, right? So instead of traveling with 5 guys and 17 pieces of luggage to do films, I can get a one-shot camera, travel around and produce virtual tours for, these CD-ROMs they're making. Love it. So I then set up World Travel Vision to produce content. A couple of years in, hotels and destinations ask me, so Henry, how do we get this stuff on this new World Wide Web thingy? Right, this is the late 90s, right? The middle to late 90s. And I'm like, I don't know, send them a CD-ROM, right? There were no standards. They didn't know what to do with it. So I said, you know what, let me see what I can do to help. It's at that time I realized another opportunity presents itself. The internet, right, needs visuals, and many of the hotels couldn't get their pictures on there because what's called the systems that did the rate and availability, like how much is that room and is it available on those days, they didn't have pictures, right? So the opportunity was, let me help them deliver the virtual tours, but in addition, let me see what I can do to help standardize the image distribution. So we pivoted from a production company with World Travel Vision to a tech platform called ICE, Internet Content Exchange Portal. And ICE was simply set up to help collect, manage, size, tag, deliver images on behalf of hotels everywhere in the world, right? And of course, that took decades. So 25 years of my life was building ICE and scaling it and trying to get all of the connections, because it's a very, there's a big moat, right? If you say, Henry, that's a great idea, I want to do that. You go to the largest hotel group in the world, Wyndham, for example, almost 10,000 hotels. And you say, I've got this platform, it'll size, tag, categorize, it'll do everything but pick your nose. And they say, great. Can you send it to Expedia and Booking? And then you say, well, what? I'm working on it. I just, I need you guys to get to them. Well, I won't give you the content until you can get me to them, right? I need the content to get to the distribution, and I need the distribution to get the content, right? And because I slowly evolved it over decades, then, you have this huge barrier to entry. And so that's kind of where that global tech platform came in. If you wanted to get your images everywhere in the right size and the right category and the right language, you would use either my platform or my competitor.
What was probably the biggest challenge you faced while scaling that platform? And what often there's something surprising that helps you overcome that challenge. What was that? What was the challenge, and how did you fix it?
I'm going to say the biggest challenge is my own stupidity, really, but I didn't know anything about technology or how to write a line of code. I still can't write a line of code, right? Okay, so you hire people that can, get it. But then I didn't really know how to run a legitimate business. Production is generally a beginning, middle, and an end, and then you go to the next, and it's not an ongoing concern like this was. So I thought, oh man, total imposter syndrome, right? I'm running a tech company. I don't know how to write a line of code. I don't know how to run a business. I go back to school and I get my MBA to learn a little bit about business. I read a book and I get more clarity on what all of these things mean, right? How do you get the right people? I can't even afford to pay myself. You want me to pay people I can't afford? What do you mean, get the right people? How do you get a vision? How do you do these things? And that's kind of the learning process that I didn't know any of that per se. And I just kind of grew, made the mistakes, had a lot of bumps in the road along the way. And finally, through tenacity and perseverance, figured it out.
You sound like me, and I'll say this in the sense that I'm one of those people that has a bunch of deep but diverse, seemingly unrelated experiences on my resume. To me, it was really neat when I finally got to that place. It all came together, right? And I'm wondering, what are some of the most valuable lessons you learned through that diverse journey that got you here?
Well, I think Steve Jobs put it best when he said, you look back and you see how you connect the dots, right? I mean, if you would have said, why are you taking a calligraphy class, Mr. Jobs? It's not going to benefit you at all in life. And it did, right? So those are the types of things that I think when I look back, I'm like, okay, what benefited me? Just a lot of things that were diverse enough to figure, okay, this I see an opportunity, this I see. And then when I realized I don't know what I don't know, I need to go back and get an education and learn stuff. And somebody, fortunately, handed me a book called Traction, which is written by a guy named Gino Wickman. And it clearly articulated and spelt out how to get a handle on growing the business, right? People who start businesses, they're like, oh, I'm going to build this great solution and they will come. No, not really. And, there's a lot
You
of
just
external.
described every lawyer that hangs a shingle.
Yeah. 90% is either the marketing or, you can't just expect that it's going to happen, right? And you kind of have to build in processes and you have to have a vision. You have to share it with the people. The people have to be on board. So you have the right culture. You have to have the processes and the structures in place and the KPIs. I mean, it's an ongoing concern that constantly grows and needs feeding, right? Getting to a certain point, is relatively easy. And then there's another level and then there's another level. And, so it can be challenging. Sometimes you like the challenge, and sometimes you think, "What the hell have I done? Oh my God, I should have just worked for the man and gotten a paycheck and gotten all the benefits and not had his nightly worries."
I've had people tell me, I want to go start my own business because I want to be my own boss, and they're comparing themselves to someone who's owned a business for 20 years, and that person gets to drive around like a douche in a $300,000 car all day, and looks like he has nothing to do. Well, you're comparing your chapter one to someone's happily ever after. And the reality is you're probably leaving a 40-ish hour a week job that pays well or decent or enough
Yeah.
to exist, or enough to make you have the confidence to go out on your own. But you're trading that for probably 80 hours a week with no guarantee of any income. You still want to do it, because if they still want to do it, well, then you have that disorder called entrepreneurism, and I can work with you. But you have to have it. It's not necessarily a good thing. It's like ADHD. I manage it and it helps me get a lot of things done in a day. Other people, it makes them absolutely useless.
Yeah.
You have to have the right system.
We all know the statistics. 90% of small businesses and startups fail. Okay. But we're delusional as entrepreneurs. We're delusional and say, yeah, but we're the exception. We're not the rule. We're better than that. And the truth of the matter is, yeah, 10% of us. Are you one of them? Are you willing to learn and grow and realize the mistakes you've made and pivot and things like that? And if you're not, it's hard. So, my joke early on was, God, I feel like I have ADD. I went to the doctor and I asked him, I said, can you run some tests? Because, I think I have ADD. I come back a week later and he says, look, I have good news and I have bad news. All right. What's the good news? He goes, you don't have ADD. I'm like, oh, thank God. What's the bad news? He says, you have ADSO. I'm like, what? Huh? What's ADSO? He says, attention deficit, shiny object, which is kind of the problem too when you're an entrepreneur and you start out, everything's a shiny object. And I also say, being a whore for every nickel that somebody has to give you, yeah, early on, you need it to survive. I will do anything, whatever you need. I will take care of it. Yeah, I need that nickel, right? As you grow, and it's really hard to do this, you need to learn to say no, because then you say, I know where I can win. I know where I can be the best at one thing. What is it? And say no to everything else. It's going to hurt you a little bit, because at some point you can't be everything to everybody. You got to learn stuff. You got to educate yourself. And there's a lot of great things that you can say, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, great. Then do it. How many people go, yeah, I really should do this, or spend more time, or, document these things, or implement these KPIs or whatever. Okay. What the hell are you waiting for? Because if you don't do it now, it only gets worse and you get more minutia and you're buried in stuff. So I'm a huge fan of, a little bit more action and less yapping, right? But I only say that because for years I was stressing about every little thing and I was losing sleep and God, if you look back and you go, why did I worry so much? Well, because I had my house mortgaged for the line of credit to pay employees. I mean, yeah, I worried a lot thinking, my world was coming to an end, but eventually it didn't. I'll add one analogy to that, the paradox between drowning and treading water. I mean, there's not a lot of difference in arm movement. It's minor, but there's a huge difference mentally and physically expended when you're drowning and you think you're gonna die, as opposed to the lackadaisical, less mental, less physical energy spent treading water. But you can't learn it right away. It takes time to go from flailing your arms to stay afloat to just calmly treading water and breathing easily. It's a little bit of effort, but once you get there, God, I don't have to stress so much. The world is not coming to an end. I have a roof, I have food, I have people who love me, I have security. Okay, I'm not going to die.
Because I don't remember all the details, but the point of it was they put some poor rat in water and within a few minutes it drowned. Then they put another rat in the water, and right before it drowned, they took it out for about a minute and then put it back in the water, and then it treaded water for 14 hours.
Yeah, because it believed.
And I don't know the 14 hours. I don't know what the number was, but it was amazing.
It didn't die.
It was a mindset shift, and what you just said explained it. Treading water and drowning, you're doing the same thing. One of them, you're just a little more optimistic and less stressed.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. It is a mindset. And it's really, that's the words are hard to tell you, hey, relax, the world's not coming to an end. Yeah. And that time it is. It's totally coming to an end. I'm going to die, my world, I'm going to go bankrupt. I'm going to have, my house taken away, whatever. I get that feeling. I certainly do.
What inspired you to produce a TV series based on the reincarnation of Marie? I'm wondering if you have a little sneak peek into what the series will be about.
Oh, absolutely. So, this is, again, how all of this interweaves into connecting the dots. When I moved to Los Angeles and I thought I wanted to produce and direct movies, which didn't happen, of course, I got a book. It was called The Reincarnation of Marie. And it actually wasn't even a book. It was a manuscript written by my father. And he wrote this thing 40 years ago without intention of publishing it. He just wanted to do a tribute to a friend of his. My sister's helping him move. She says, what is this? He says, it's a love story. And it's like, oh my God, dad, love story? That didn't make sense, right? He was a travel writer, right? So we end up, she reads it, she loves it. She calls me up, she goes, this would make a great movie. She sends it to me, I fall in love with it. I call dad, I said, Dad, this is amazing. I want to buy the rights. He goes, great. I said, okay, I don't have any money. Can I give you $1? Make it legal? He said, sure. And I go, great. Can I borrow $1? Right? Needless to say, I thought, how nepotistic of me. I've got this book. I don't know if it's any good because it's my father. Let me give it to a friend of mine. I had a friend who was producing a movie at the time. He says, Henry, I'm in the middle of something. Give me time. I said, you got all the time you need. 3 days later, calls me up. He goes, this was amazing. I was meant to do this. Let's do this. I end up going to Chile to produce game shows. He ends up going into real estate. We stay in touch. I say, listen, when I sell Ice Portal, the travel tech platform, we're going to get back to doing this, right? So this has gone 40 years full circle where I wanted to produce a movie 40 years ago. And keep in mind, it was a different world. Now, opportunity again. There's tons of streamers looking for content. You can find a niche audience. So the book is a paranormal romance with historical fiction. And what that means is this guy reads a journal from a woman, she existed, who had died 100 years earlier. In the reading of the journal, he falls in love with her. And then he realizes, oh my God, I've lost my mind. I've fallen in love with a dead woman. This is not good. Eventually, he finds her reincarnation. And this is kind of the basis of that simplistic story of the book, if you will, right? Now, the series does a much deeper dive into that past lives, whether it's slipping through time, whether it's reincarnation, whether it's the metaverse. But the reality is, we ask these questions. So, first of all, does reincarnation exist, or are there soulmates? And if there are, how do we know the people in our current life, and what did they mean to us in a previous life, and how intertwined, again, connecting dots, are all these things, right? Is this person I'm with my soulmate, or did we have a relationship before, or is it not because now we're getting divorced and I hate her, or whatever, right? And this is love and hate, two sides of the same coin. Are we working out karma? Do we have to pay for the sins of the father? I mean, a lot of these things, the series is a very twisting, turning, evoking, the past lives and what they did or didn't do that we're having to pay for in this life. And these are the deep questions, it's like, is this all there is? And if it is, wow, how sad. But if it isn't, then what more are we? There's the DNA from Holocaust survivors that still have PTSD from that. And does that stuff get passed down? And so what's going on here?
Modern house cats are not afraid of cougars and lionesses because their confidence through breeding and living around humans who are higher on the food chain or whatever has made them not scared. And
Yeah.
I mean, I watch all my animals and I think it's actually sad when I start to think about how useless instincts are to humans now because we're so comfy. But I watch instincts. Like I'm watching the horses come in before the rain starts and then I'm standing there getting wet. I'm like,
And they're looking at you going, do you not see what's happening here?
that sounds fascinating. I'm going to stay in touch with me on that because that sounds like something I would love to watch.
I'm telling you, you would love the book. And, if you want to stay up to date, go to the website. I think I gave it to you, but it's marithestory.com. And it has, information on the book, obviously where to buy it. It has information on the author, my dad, who passed 14 years ago. And it has information on the TV series, which the working title now is called Slippin', like slipping through time.
I'm talking about for aspiring entrepreneurs. What advice would you give to new or young or aspiring entrepreneurs who are just starting out on this journey?
Oh God, there's a lot of little things, but I think really this is more life advice. But then I'll get to that. Is your thoughts create your life, right? So if you believe you're going to fail and the business is and it's a struggle, then it will be, right? If you believe this is, even the ups and downs, there are learning experiences, there are rewards, this is kind of what is going to produce your life. But for the most part, are you solving a problem, right? Do you have a simple process and a vision and a culture that will get you there? Because they're not all going to work, right? And, by evidence, if I were running a DVD duplication business or a video rental store, a couple of decades ago, I'd be bankrupt right now. So the world changes. And so are you doing something that's needed and wanted and solving a problem now? Or, are you doing something because, the world needs another boutique clothing store or something? I don't know.
What are your projects on the horizons? I mean, we talked about the TV show, right? But are you going to keep the same random approach or do you have like a targeted next big thing.
One of the things when people say, "Oh my God, I can't wait to retire. I'm just going to sit on the beach and do nothing." Okay, yeah, right. And then after a week or two, what next, right? When people say things like that, it drives me nuts. It's like, just have something that you enjoy, some purpose or passion, or, because you need to stimulate your mind constantly. So the answer to the question is, the series is the next step. And that, development of these things and going into pre-production and then production and post-production, that's years, right? So that'll keep me out of trouble for a little while. If the series does well, then it goes into a season 2 and beyond, right? So that could be the rest of my life, if you will. In addition to that, I coach small businesses just because people request. I don't really go out there and promote a business doing that because I don't have the time. I angel invest into companies that I like and I think can make a difference or work. And I also stay out of trouble with my wife, and we travel a lot. So that's pretty much keeping me out of trouble.
If any of our listeners or watchers want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Simple. I would suggest go to mariethestory.com. There is a contact page, or go to my LinkedIn page. It's Henry Woodman, and I don't know how many Henry Woodmans there are, but there I am.
Thank you so much. This has been great. This was a great interview, and I learned some stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad. I hope everybody learned something. I appreciate it. I look forward to it.
I want to remind you, and of course, all of our listeners, I think you already know this. If whatever you're doing, you want it to grow, you're probably going to have to do something inappropriate.